And we're back here on the show. And Sandra?
Yes, I feel I'm getting dizzy, Hugh.
Are you? Why? Because of the cameras zooming in and out?
No, I'm going to just continue this.
Okay. Well, listen, we've got Danila Botha joining us again, back on the show.
Yeah.
You were here, I don't know, what, 2-3 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, I want to say 2012, maybe?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
2011, 2012.
And you had written, was it a book of short stories
That's
at the
right,
time?
yeah, good memory, yeah. It's called, my first book was called Got No Secrets. It came out in Canada with Tightrope Books, in 2010.
Yeah.
So it would have been 2011 maybe? Or,
yeah.
2012 maybe?
Yeah. Well, I remember that book. And now you've got this new book called Too Much on the Inside.
Yeah.
And this was released in June?
Yeah, June of 2015. Quattro Books was the publisher.
Yeah, Quattro Books. And what's interesting, I find, I know we've been talking a little bit about the book, is that what's set in Toronto.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And it sounds very Toronto in the sense that it's involving all these characters, people that have moved to Toronto from all over the world and other parts of Canada.
That's right, yeah.
And they're all interacting on Queen Street.
That's right, yeah.
So we have a person from Halifax, a person from Israel, a person from South Africa, and
a person from Brazil, from Belo Horizonte in Brazil. Yeah.
Right. So you're, I don't know, where do you get your inspiration? I mean, you could pick anywhere, and why would you?
That's such a good question. So I was born in South Africa.
Okay.
And as someone who heard, I used to hear about how bad the crime was all the time.
In South Africa?
In South Africa. Yeah. We have some of the highest rates of murder and rape in the world.
That's what I've heard.
Yes.
In South Africa?
In South Africa. And HIV, and also just a lot of, and it's so sad because it's such a beautiful place, but it's also so politically fraught, and there's been so much systematic oppression and then a reaction to that.
No, is that, because I've often wondered, is that part of the racial issue? That all that crime?
Or is it poverty? Is it just a poverty issue?
I don't want to pretend that I know the answer to such a complicated question, but I think that when you systematically oppress people for years and years, and there's a terrible system in place, there's a natural reaction, right? There's a natural push against that. I think it's probably it's probably very complicated. The socioeconomics probably have to do with apartheid and the system of oppression. I'm sure that's part of the reason.
Is it?
But as a writer, I look at less. I wish I had the background to analyze things politically and understand the social reality, but I look at individuals and how it affects people's lives. And a lot of great South African writers have written about these things in a fictional context also. I read, of course, I'd read J.M. Coetzee's Disgrace and all these other books that have been written about it, but I really wanted to write about it from the point of view of a female character, and being a woman myself, and I wanted to write about how it feels to try to go on with life afterwards, because a lot of books that write about these things write about the immediate effect of it at the time, and they don't always deal with
longer term.
So something terrible happens and somehow people have the courage to get up and move on with their lives, but how do they do that, and what does that look like, and what does that mean? So that was what I was kind of interested in from the South African perspective. And also, I had the character, I'm from Johannesburg, the character is actually from Cape Town, but I had spent time in Cape Town in my early 20s, and it's such a beautiful city, and I have so many friends, and there's a great writing community and an artist community in Cape Town. It's a much more progressive place in a lot of ways, so I really wanted to use the suburbs of Cape Town as kind of a backdrop. And then my mom's family is from Israel. I'm Jewish. My family's a lot of my family lives in Israel. So I really wanted to, and I had spent a few years living there in my early 20s. So I really wanted to write about that. And then I had lived in Halifax. I went to Teachers College in Halifax. And actually, the character of Lucas was inspired when I took a bus in Halifax. And there's a really friendly guy from the Annapolis Valley, and he started telling me this terrible story, and it was so interesting, and it was so sad, and he was such a person I sympathized with so much, even though he'd accidentally committed a serious crime as a young person. And I really wanted to, the story really started with that character. Mm-hmm. And then I used to teach English as a second language, and I had a lot of Brazilian friends.
Wow.
And so
there is a personal connection to all of these places.
I mean, I haven't yet been to Brazil. I'd really love to go. I've been to all the other places and lived in the other places. I've never been to Brazil, but I have a lot of friends from there who all helped me with the Portuguese and the slang and the descriptions of Belo Horizonte.
So it's I mean, you said it's not really autobiographical.
No, it's not.
And yet you're bringing all that experience, your own experience, to bear to the book, right?
Yes.
But I want to ask, like, how do you, when you talk about somebody who suffered a terrible crime?
Yes.
Right? And you weave that into this story, and you explore how that affects a person and how it affects their relationships and all that sort of thing. Like, how do you get in touch with that?
It's very difficult to do something justice unless you really feel that these are stories that deserve to be told and need to be told. It's very hard. I interviewed a lot of people. I spoke to a lot of people. I read a lot of articles. I read a lot of books, both fiction and nonfiction. I just did a lot of research, and I hope that it reads as authentic and real, and that it's sensitive enough and with as much love and respect for people who've been through these kinds of things. And no, thank God that it's not a personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? Even when I was a really young kid, I grew up hearing about these things all the time. Like family friends and friends of friends, and it definitely didn't feel like it wasn't something that could touch me.
And we hear about it here too, because there are so many South Africans in Toronto. It's ridiculous,
yeah, there's a big community in Toronto. Right,
so everybody knows somebody from South Africa.
Yeah.
And you hear those horror stories, right?
Yeah, it's terrible. So yeah, it was something I really wanted to write about, but I also, wanted to write about the place and the characters with a lot of love and affection. And I feel the same way about Israel. I loved living in Israel, and I have hundreds of cousins and family and friends in Israel, and But no, nothing is autobiographical. Nothing. Thank God, none of these things happened to me.
Well, what about this though? Because then,
thank God not.
I mean, you talk about it's set on Queen Street in Toronto.
Yeah.
And
I
you
lived in
talk
Toronto
about
for a long time. I lived on Queen Street for a long time.
You talk about Queen Street like it's a fifth character in the book, right?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
And so,
I love
you've
Queen
got
Street.
experience
living on Queen Street. Yeah.
Let's talk about Queen Street.
Yeah. Okay. What do you want to talk?
I don't know what's so good about Queen Street.
Everything. What isn't good about Queen Street?
So you know what? The more we're talking, the more I'm thinking. Okay, there is maybe a little more biographical, not in terms of the actual events that happen,
but
some of the commonalities in the story, the human interest.
But it's never what people think. People. It's funny. People call you and they read your stuff, or you meet people and they're like, oh well, this totally seems like something like you would have experienced. And I'm so happy that it reads as real enough to you that you think that.
Yes.
No, I mean in weird ways, yes. The character's taste in music is usually my taste in music, or the things that they love about Queen Street, the mix of grit and glitter, the mix of art and commerce, and the amount of multicultural stuff on Queen Street. There's a lot of, I love Queen Street. It's one of my favorite parts of the city. No, I'm sure when the characters describe what they love about the geographic, physical location, the energy, the pulsing energy of it, and the amazing graffiti and the art and the music and I'm sure that's my taste.
I'm just wondering, Queen Street's actually a very long street.
Yes, that's true.
In fact, I heard that the Queen streetcar is the longest streetcar in the world.
Yeah, really? In the world?
In the world,
no way.
Yeah.
Really?
To go from one end to the other?
Wow. Okay, so I'm talking about Queen Street West, but Queen Street East is cool also. Leslieville is cool also. Mostly the book is mostly set from about John, which is a part of Queen Street I lived in. Actually, Marlies lives at 50 Stephanie Street, which is where I lived for a long time. Oh, that's it.
Okay, now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So which is right by Grange Park.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yes.
And it's funny because there's a scene where Des is very protective of her early in the book, and he says are you sure it's safe to walk in that park late at night? And she kind of laughs because where she's from is so much worse. But I loved living there, and I lived also west of there. I lived all over Queen for a long time. I love Queen Street.
Is that park safe After Dark?
Yeah, it's fine.
I know, I go through there all the time.
Yeah, it's fine.
Depends on your perspective.
Nothing. I used to, I had a dog, and I used to take the dog out for walks late at night, it was fine.
And you got the art gallery right there, right?
Yeah, the art gallery's right there. It's Queen Street is an amazing place. It's full of such vibrant energy. It's such a home for artists and such a great community of writers and visual artists and music and musicians, and it inspires I think a unique sense of loyalty and unity and community. Yeah, absolutely. I was reading a while ago when Maimolidi said those crazy things about Parkdale, and artists were so angry and people were so angry because everybody who's lived there identifies so strongly with it, and it's such a cultural and artistic sense of identity. Yeah, no, I love it.
Especially Parkdale even has its own identity all on its own.
Definitely,
right?
And a lot of the book is set kind of on the border of Queen West and Parkdale. So there's two of the characters live in Parkdale. And it's one of my favorite parts of the city. No, I miss Queen Street because I live in the suburbs now. Mm-hmm. It's such a great part of the city.
Yeah.
So how do these characters come together? They just bump into each other at a store?
Oh, okay. No, so actually, Lucas, who the character who's originally from the Valley, Nova Scotia, meets Nikki, who's his Israeli girlfriend, actually in a store that's kind of modeled after Rotate This, the record store on Queen Street. Okay. So they meet in a store. Nikki actually works for Des, who owns the bar called CDRR, which is a club that's kind of something like Sneaky D's on College, kind of mixed with the Bovine and some of the Cameron House, something kind of in between that's on West Queen West. And Marlies, who's originally South African, also works for Des. So three of them work together.
Okay. So I thought you were asking, how do the characters come together in your mind? Because you speak of them with such kind of as if
you know them,
that they're real, that they're.
I think you have to love your characters.
You have to really get into the heads of
really
them, though, right?
To feel like they're Do
you feel like you're a split personality sometimes? Especially if you're having these conversations. Okay, this person is saying to this person, and you have to be this person, enter this person at the same time.
It's a really interesting question. They were all kind of written separately. And there was it's all in this book. Right now I'm writing a novel that's in the third person, and it's about two characters, but it's really different to write in the third person. When you write in the first person, you really feel like you're in their minds, and there's always, I don't ever write autobiographically, actually. So I always feel like there's a separation, and all I'm trying to do is figure out what they would say and what they would think, and how to make them as convincing as possible, and what would they look like, and what would they be into, and what would they. So
So is this one written in the first person for every character?
Yeah. So every character, every chapter in the book is written. So when you look,
do you want to read maybe just a little tiny?
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So every chapter is from the point of view of a different character. Right. So Nikki opens the book, and then Des has the next scene. Yeah. And then Marlies. So it's almost not traditional in that way, because instead of chapters, it's voices. It's you go from one perspective to another.
And first person is kind of radical.
Is it?
Well, isn't it?
I don't know.
As a writer,
because you're claiming to be that person.
When you think about the novels, the early novels were all written in the third person, weren't they? Joe said this, and then he walked to the store.
So from the observer perspective.
That's third person, right?
Yeah.
Instead of.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm Joe. I walked to the store.
No, I think there's been I think there's a lot of things that are written from both points of view. What's nice, I remember even when I was really young. I remember reading Catcher in the Rye when I was in high school, and I remember thinking, and Franny and Zoe, I read a lot of Salinger in high school, and I remember it really blew my mind. I was really it was something that was written in the 50s, but I was a teenager in the late 90s, and I was wow, I can totally relate to this, and I really loved the immediacy of the first person, of writing in first person. What's hard when you're doing four voices is that you don't want it to be claustrophobic, and you want the voices to all be distinct and sound very different from each other, and you want people to know who's speaking without having to look at the top of the page, because they all have unique voices, and that was the challenge of that.
So how do you do it? Do you have to write a different character on a different day, or can you switch from one to another?
You can switch from one to another, but then they suddenly start sounding like each other. I had a really amazing editor. Sandra Kasturi was my editor. She's also, she and her husband run an amazing press called Cheesine, that's like genre fiction, and I was really lucky because she also writes literary fiction and poetry and stuff, and I was lucky to get to work with her. So she was incredibly helpful with that. She was like, why doesn't Lucas sound more like a person from Nova Scotia? Why does he talk like this? And so in the editing process,
she really
pushed me to really work on that in the editing process. So that was really great. My publishers at Quattro also gave me really good notes, and my agent gave me really good notes. Like it was all like I got a lot of good helpful. Yeah. I mean, it's hard. That was a big challenge of it for sure.
Now, are you getting nominated for any Bookers or anything like that?
We'll find out. Things are coming up in the next few months. I hope so.
Have you had any, any critical acclaim or?
Thank God. Thank God. People have been really, really kind. Like the review in Quill and Crier was great. The Literary Review of Canada was really kind. Like people have been inordinately kind about this book. Broken Pencil just did a really nice review that I just saw last week. Like it's been, the reviews have been great, and the coverage has been great. Like when I did, I toured with the writer Lisa DeNicolets, and we went on the East Coast, and we read in Halifax and Moncton, and the newspapers and like the people that came to events were so nice. Like the amount of support like this book has been getting has been awesome. I'm so grateful for people's reaction to it.
Did you take your baby with you?
I had to when he was really young, because it's funny, my son was born 6 weeks before my book launch.
The timing is not the best.
Oh man, it was crazy. It was so funny at the launch. Sandra introduced me at the launch, and she was like, I just can't believe that like this was done in the same time frame. We were doing edits, and I was like 9 months pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm lucky. No, it's all been great. Like I've had amazing people in my life who've been really helpful and have helped, and supported. My husband's been great. Like all the it's been like my family's been great. Like everyone, it's been fine. It's been great.
And now you're near the.
I have to ask a question.
Okay, go.
What does too much on the inside mean?
Okay, so there is a really great song by a New York artist, she's like a singer / rapper called Princess Superstar, and she did this great collaboration with Beth Orton a few years ago called Untouchable. Okay. And the chorus to the song goes, "Sometimes I wear nothing on the outside because I have too much on the inside," and it just costs a lot of money. My publisher was like quoting like famous artists, and the publishing, it costs a lot of money. So I sent her a note like after the book came out. She's like, "Oh, that's so nice," and that was so. I really loved the idea of it. The concept was that someone could have serious things in their present or in their past, but when they talk to you, they show no emotion or nothing, and you would have no idea who you're talking to. You have no idea what their story is. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the characters mask a lot of really difficult things because they have to and because they want to as a coping strategy for the things that are going on in their lives. And I love that idea that when you meet somebody, you can have no idea what their story is. And we meet people from all over the world all the time, or even we meet people from Toronto. We have no idea what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what's going on, what affects their day-to-day and their behavior.
Wow, that's interesting. Nice perspective.
Thank you.
So you're near the end of the promotional phase of this book, right?
Yeah, I think so. Like probably the next few months. Yeah.
And planning for your next book.
And now you got another book. When's that going to come out?
Yeah, it's coming out in September of this year. It's called For All the Men and Some of the Women I've Known, and it's a collection of short stories that's coming out with Tightrope Books.
For All the Men and Some of the Women
I've Known, which of course people are going to think is autobiographical, but it's not. It's a collection of short stories that's all about relationships, like romantic relationships and also friendships and all those kinds of things.
All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's funny because people always think, especially some of the stories are third person, some of them are first person, but people always think that it must be true, it must be. But there's characters and there's linked characters in some of the stories and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's...
So what attracts you to that?
To relationships?
Well, stuff that you haven't explained that's not part. It's not.
Sometimes you hear a story and you think, "How is that possible?"
Mm-hmm.
Like you think, "What? What are you telling me? That cannot possibly be true." And that stuff is really fun to wonder about and to imagine. Like you want to fill in the blanks in your own mind of how people could do certain things, or why would someone want to do that? Or like, you know, like someone tells you this story, like I'm involved with this guy, and they tell you nothing good about it, and they're like, but I love him and I think we're going to get married, and you're like, what?
It's so true.
Like,
oh
or you're like,
so
and you're like, but why? Why would you do that?
All you do is cry.
Yeah,
and you're not, like,
yeah,
that's
like so
true.
that kind of thing was like a big part of that collection. Like like I guess it's I feel like everything I write kind of is about that. Like I always want to know why people make the decisions that they make and why people.
I don't think you'll ever figure that one out.
No, but it's interesting to try.
It
like,
sure
it's
would be. There's the book. There's the
and
book.
the good thing is, like, you know, like when you, like, because I do some journalism and other things also, but when you're writing fiction, the truth doesn't matter. You can tell whatever you want because you get to some kind of emotional truth, or you get to some kind of, and that's, so there's that, and then there's also like you want to explore, like, oh, what would have to happen in my life, or what would have to change my perspective for me to do something like that, or for me to feel like I would make that choice in that situation, or that would be me. Like how, what would have to happen to me for me to want to, or like where can I find compassion, or where can I find understanding, or where can like a lot of the time it's that, like my life is not that interesting. Like a lot of the time, it's just. You want to understand like why people do or say or feel or react in certain ways to certain situations, and I try to always come from a place of compassion and love for the people and love for the characters that I'm writing about.
Wow, that's amazing. So you'll have to come back and
I'd
tell us about the new
I'd
book.
love to hear about some of those
you.
relationships that we can't figure out. What are you thinking?
Yeah, like that's even in Too Much on the Inside. Like Marlies really loves Des, and it's sad, and it's and he really, and in the end he realizes that he loves her also. But it's like it's not an ideal relationship, you know. Like especially there's like a scene where she doesn't know he's married, and the wife. Shows up and it's like this big thing, and you think like, and she still, and then in the end they still try to make it work, and you want to understand like that kind of love is amazing. Like you want to understand why, that's like it's very, to me, like there's a lot of really serious things in the book, but there's also a lot of love. Like it's also a love story, like a love letter to Queen Street, and also a love story between the characters. Like it's, to me, like there's something very romantic about how much they love each other.
Have you done a reading at the Cameron for this? You should. No, I haven't. That would
actually.
be really cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I should.
Right?
You know what? It would be really fun. I've been getting to do such awesome festivals and such awesome reading series, and that's been so special and so nice. Like, I'd love to do that for sure. Queen Street venues are cool. I did a reading with some other writers at Type Books, and that was really great. Like on just across from Trinity Bellwoods Park, like just right there. And so that was like super special and awesome. Especially because before my first book came out, when I lived on Queen Street, I don't know if you guys remember Pages, the bookstore. So that was like my favorite bookstore in the city.
They close?
Yeah, and when I was an undergrad and I was studying creative writing at York, my biggest dream in the world was one day I would have a book, and Pages used to have a shelf for small press, like an indie books. And I was like, one day I'm going to have a book and it's going to be on that shelf. And then the store closed like a year before my first book came out, and I was so sad. And then Lucinda Johnston, who's also an author who also did her book with Quattro last year, it's really amazing. She's such a good writer. She used to work at Pages, and she came and we did a reading together recently, and she was at the Type Books reading, and I was like saying how emotional I was because it was almost as good as if it was at Pages. Because Type is like an amazing store, and it's really similar. It's like they stock a lot of local writers and a lot of Canadian authors, and it's right there on Queen Street, right in the heart of where I imagined this whole story to be.
Perfect anyway.
Yeah,
right?
It was really perfect. It was really special.
The new Pages.
Yeah. No, it's a great story too. Type is great too. Yeah.
Okay, Danila.
Wow, thank you
well,
so
listen,
much.
thanks for doing this, and I guess people can get this, pretty much anywhere?
You can get it anywhere, yeah. Chapters and Amazon and any bookstore. Yeah, most Type and all those places carry it for sure.
Okay, great. Well,
thank
congratulations,
you so much for
and great to see you again.
And good luck on all the awards.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, yeah. That'd be awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danila.
Oh, do you have a website for yourself?
Yes, it's danilabotha.com or facebook.com/DanilaBothaWriter.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks, Danila.
Thank you so much.
We're going to take a quick little break here on Liquid Lunch and come back with Alexi and eat some raw food, hopefully. Okay, thanks. We'll be right back.